be there. I'll be there next time.
And with that being said, trustees, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are open. Go for it.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the East Hampton Town Trustees for February 13th, 2023. And I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Marlene, can you do a roll call, please?
John Holdren.
Here.
Francis Fox.
Here.
David Cataletta.
Here.
Ben Dollinger.
Here.
Kim Garnell.
Here.
Jim Bryan.
Here.
Susan McGraw-Cooper. Mike Martinson.
Here.
And Bill Taylor.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. For start with public comment. We have Scott Briner here. Proposed revetment reconstruction. Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, as long as they can see it, right? Usually good.
Good evening. My name is Scott O'Briner. I'm with Inner Science Research Associates. And I'm actually here with Eric Brown, who is the attorney for the applicant as well. The proposal is to reconstruct an existing 423 linear foot revetment. It's reconstruction. Everything is there currently. However, probably the most confusing aspect about this proposal is who's the applicant, who's the project sponsor, who's a consenting participating owner. So I'm just going to go around here for a moment. The owner here is Tromhouse 1. They are the applicant and project sponsor. In pink, the owner is called the Tromhouse 2. So obviously these two properties are linked under different LLCs. In green is the Village of East Hampton. They are a participating, consenting owner too with this application. They have the plans that you have in front of you for the revetment, and they've agreed to be an applicant as well for this proposal. They have a revetment here, and it's collapsing as well. Let me take it to the next level. Thank you. Same thing, it's just an air photo. This is an air photo from 2020. You can see the outline of the Rayner revetment here, which was approved in 1993. The DEC approved revetments for the Rayners, the Village, 75 West End Road. This was Calvin Klein, and he owned that too. So the DEC approved the four revetments essentially that connect all together in 1993, and it was built pretty much all at the same time. This is the current survey, composite survey, the three properties put together. Outlined in orange were areas where we did test excavations to confirm that the revetment is there. Most of the time, you don't see it. We actually, we had consent by the village to actually take a backhoe and do excavations, and photographs of those excavations were submitted as part of my application document. This is the plan that the DEC approved in 1993. Stamped approved. This is the Rayner property. This is the village property. This says Klein Residence, which is now 75 West End Road, otherwise known as Trom House 1. And the revetment kind of just kisses the Trom House 2 property. So we're not proposing a revetment in this area. It's gonna do essentially the same thing as it does in the proposal from the approval from 1993.
What's in front of that Trom House 2 now? Nothing?
Trom House 2 is a vacant parcel at the moment.
So
I think John is asking, hi, Eric Brown from Ackerman Partners. John, I think you're asking in terms of what kind of protection is there. The village was uncomfortable having us doing any excavating there because of the beach grass and everything. So we believe, based upon historic research, that there is nothing. It's 99% sand. And what Scott has said is that on the extreme western edge, where 75 meets 69, there appears to be, some rock from the 75 one that ends.
it's like a return.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's not,
Well,
it's not-
the return, kind of goes into that property right now, and it's vacant. And you'll notice that on the proposed plans, the return goes right, it matches what we think is there. There's a lot of beach grass, there's a lot of dunes right here. The village didn't want us excavating into this area. So what I suspect is gonna happen when this gets underway and getting constructed, probably the first excavation will start where we know the structure is, where's the the easternmost excavation took place. And then they'll probably go east. They'll probably start here. And then they'll just keep excavating and building in that direction. And then when that's done, they'll probably go this way. The construction is only going to be built in about 50-foot increments. We're not taking the entire revetment out in the beginning. That would be, it would be foolish for the property owner from a storm surge and protection. So it's going to be removed in 50-foot increments and then rebuilt in 50-foot increments.
You're gonna use the same materials?
There's a lot of repurposing going on. The documents indicate that if the rock that's excavated meets the qualifications as specified in the plans, we will certainly reuse the rock.
And that would be what, just the weight?
Weight and size and configuration, because it's a points out revetment. So it's going to be rough surfaced and it's got to interlock to keep it all together.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, we basically made the same proposal, but on a smaller scale at 199 Lily Pond Lane, which.
Yeah, that was only about, what, 3 years ago now?
Yeah, but that was only 100 linear
Sure.
feet. This is about 4 times bigger.
If it's all covered with sand, how do you know it's no good?
Well, that was the purpose for the test excavations. That we did 5 of them in the presence of an individual whose name is Dr. Lee Wisher. And he inspected the rock. It's in the reports. I could probably show you.
Generally speaking.
No, it's actually, it's a good question. And Let me just show you a picture. There you go. That's one of the test excavations right there. And what he determined is that these stones were simply laid upon the bank. They're not, he indicated that it's not an engineered structure. There's no underlying rock that supports these large fronting stones. So what happens, and he goes into a lot of detail in the reports that you have, if the face of this structure were to be impacted by a storm surge or waves, what happens is the sand behind it gets washed out, and then the structure eventually collapses in on itself landward, which is exactly what's happening at the village property. This revetment, I don't even want to call it a revetment, it's more like a loose rubble pile of rock. It's significantly flat right now. And the proposal is this is all going to be the same in terms of height. And it's going to tie into the Rayner's revetment.
So was the Rayner and the Village and the Klein revetment all built differently? They all got the permit at the same time. but-
The
Rayner property has since had the revetment rebuilt.
it was, I think they added an extra, they added something on top. I don't know the maintenance that took place when this was Calvin Klein's property.
Yeah.
I don't think the village did anything on their property. Our proposal, just so I don't forget to mention it, on the village property itself, which is really quite well used, I have to say, that right of way, there's always a car there. It's pretty intensely used.
Will the revetment affect the public access?
Good question. That's what I'm about to say. We're proposing a series of rock steps fronting the village property. Pretty significant, they're big blocks. And hopefully they remain steps forever. It's specifically done that way for public, to ensure public access to the beach from that right of way. As opposed to, on the main property, we're proposing an elevated walkway. Wooden walkway.
And there was a pre-existing walkway there.
There is an existing walkway there right now. And we're basically proposing to rebuild it in the same place to new and conforming specifications with a removable seaward segment that has similar in design that was approved at 199 Lily Pond Lane.
With that lower step removable.
Yes, yes.
And the seaward dimension of this thing is going to be the same line?
Yeah. The toe stone, the bottom of the revetment basically for this entire yellowish outline is about -5. Toe stones will be basically around -2 and AVD with the 3 feet being bedding stone and filter fabric. But basically the foundation of that core stone, actually, there's a very good cross section of it right here. So basically the toe stone's around -2, and then the bottom of the structure is at -5.
Now, top of your revetment, is that different?
Yes.
From the 1993?
Yes. That's a good question. What we have when we did the test excavations, we had the surveyor come out and actually shoot elevations of the toe stone, the existing toe stone, and the elevations of the top of the structure too. So the bottom of the existing revetment, it does fluctuate. 0.3, 0.9, 0.7, 1.4, 1.2. That's the bottom. And the top ranges from 14 to 15.6.
Your proposed top of revetment.
Good question. Good question. The top of the revetment is going to be at 16. So in some areas, it won't be much different because we have a 15.6 top of revetment all the way on the east. But in some areas, it will be 2 feet higher than the existing structure. And I'm not the engineer. Lee Wisher's the engineer. And he specifically, I figured this question was going to be asked. Let me read you 3 sentences from his report, which explains how he arrived at the design of the structure. The proposed engine, this is only going to take 45 seconds. The proposed engineering design was calculated using methods published in the U.S. Army Corps Engineers Coastal Engineering Manual for coastal structures and the Eurotop overtopping manual. The coastal process analysis was conducted to evaluate design water levels and waves for the site, in addition to run-up and overtopping calculations based upon the existing conditions, such as beach elevation, slope, etc., using data generated through the coastal process analysis. An engineering design for the proposed revetment was generated. So basically, what I think that says is they looked at a whole bunch of standard manuals, did some computer modeling, and came up with this. Some of the things that probably need not be said, but since I have your attention, once the structure is built, the proposal includes 18 inches of clean sand cover that will be continuously maintained. Let me explain what that means. Once the erosion of fill covering the revetment occurs to a point where over 50% of the rock structure is exposed, the structure will be inspected for structural integrity by a qualified individual, period. If the structure is determined to be structurally sound, a dune restoration will be proposed, allowing for the restoration of 18 inches of sand cover and the planting of beach grass.
Okay. So, Scott, my understanding is you're actually here for essentially 2 permits. You're here for a construction permit for the reconstruction of the revetment, but what you are also going to be looking for is some sort of maintenance permit similar to what you have to the west at Rayners, correct?
Yeah, I remember when we worked on 199, which is identical to this, but 199 is smaller. It was 1 approval, which
It's 1 approval, but subsequent to that, such as for example, the Rayner properties, almost on an annual basis, you're coming before this board asking for a maintenance permit. And what has been discussed among this board is the future issuance of multi-year permits on those things, for the simple fact that it would more better align with your DEC permits.
Correct.
And it would streamline these things from permits being open, permits being closed on an annual basis.
Right.
So
I mean, we would support that, Jim. Obviously, that's a decision you guys
Well,
have to
Eric,
make.
I
not
really
us, but-
didn't think that you were gonna be
No.
objecting to multiple year permits. I know it does cut into your billable time.
It does, Jim. I'm taking food from my daughter's mouth.
Hopefully you can get
I'm
past
spending all
that.
my money at college right now, and I can't have it.
You
Question I
guys
had,
have approved the Rainer Dune restoration 8 out of the last 12 years.
8 out of the last 8 times you've asked us.
Wow, how many years have we done? We've done it 10, at least a decade.
I
Scott,
personally,
you don't actually need to answer that question. It was more.
8 out of the last 11 years.
All right.
Yeah.
Sell them
All right.
dredge.
Question I have is, do you currently have DEC and Army
Someone else
Corps on
does.
the ship?
For this?
Yeah.
We don't need Army Corps because we're not below mean high water. We've submitted the DEC application in October. We haven't heard anything yet from them. We're in front of you. Eric actually submitted this application to the trustees. Because the village is an applicant on this, we're waiting. They're gonna have to approve this too. The ZBA is gonna have to approve this, but we made a decision. Let's get the trustees and the DEC on board before we then go to the village, because the village is essentially, I don't want to say it's a done deal, but they're the applicant. So
Self-serving.
let's not waste the village's time until everyone else is okay with the proposal.
Yeah, and their own permits are much shorter term permits than both ours and DEC.
Mhm. We have not received any comment from the DEC yet.
You haven't. My personal feeling on this is one of those projects, I'd like to see a DEC permit issued on it for the simple fact of alignment of documents. Okay, so that if there are modifications that the DEC imparts on you as part of the process here, that those modifications follow through to both ours and ultimately to the village. So you don't have 3 dissimilar permits here.
I understand that.
Okay.
I mean, as a board, is there some consensus as to what our feelings are here?
Well, I just have a question. What would be the difference between issuing a permit subject to? I mean, we've gone back and my
The only-
understanding, we've gone
yeah.
back and forth with who comes first.
Okay, the only thing happens when you do that, issuing a permit conditional on the other permits, is this is a case where Scott has said they do not have comments from DEC yet. So there's an anticipation here that there are going to be some design modifications that are going to be imparted here. Now, those design modifications, John, if you give a permit conditional on the DEC permits, all they do is notify us that they've gotten DEC, everything's good, everything's fine. But and we've had this on multiple permits. The permit that the set of plans, the details that we're looking at may not align and probably will not align with the DEC documents. And we've had this, and where it becomes an issue is on the closeout. What are we closing out at the end of the day? If these permits are dissimilar, and I think in this case, our board certainly moves far quicker than the DEC and most of the other agencies. I think in a case where we meet twice a month, if there's some consensus here, if there's some issues here that we want to bring to the applicant at this time, we should convey it. But personally, I would feel more comfortable waiting until I had a DEC permit in hand, and I quite frankly would comment that I would support this application at this time.
I can't disagree with anything that you said. Knowing myself and knowing Eric, if you approve something, if you approve this tonight and the DEC contacts us and says, move something around, we would come back to you and
I
say,
know you would.
Right, but we're
Yeah.
not
That's
everybody,
you.
Scott.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I don't have
So
any.
I
don't
get
have
it.
any. I don't have any objection, guys. That makes sense to me. I mean, you guys have always been amazingly helpful with Mrs. Rayner's, sand. We've had to do that on a basis, and Jim's right. You guys turn that around, it's not a problem.
I have a question, probably for the beach committee more than anything. I understood Scott to say that the conditions of replacing the sand wouldn't kick in until 50% of the rock was exposed. Is that typical?
That's the typical language on these permits. Now, what isn't described in that is there is a window of time on an annual basis that the applicants and their agents and their contractors have to do it. All work has to be completed before April 1, which is the piping plover window. Okay, so that 50% of exposed stone, this is somewhat unique to the applicant here and their agents is, I'm going to use the Rayner property as an example. They have been, I want to say self-regulating on their own initiative to come to us when the revetment's exposed, get the permits to do it. Some other properties, not every property owner does that. Some property owners, we, as part of our cruising up and down the beach, we notice that it isn't 50% of the revetments exposed. It's basically 100% of the revetments exposed. And we contact those owners and ultimately remind them of the conditions of that revetment permit in the first place. That's how it's worked.
Is this condition also a village and a DEC condition?
Yes, it is. Those conditions typically align.
The village and the DEC frequently include a renourishment of the revetment. The 50% figure, to be honest with you, I came up with that. The reason I came up with that is because a lot of the conditions don't have a number. So when
something like
10% of the revetment is exposed, theoretically, you got to do a dune restoration. So I came up with 50% as a tangible, fair number. And if that 50% gets exposed in July, you can't do anything about it until October 1 comes around.
And just to remind some of the members of the board that may not be aware of this, typically the sand that we dredge out of Georgia Pond finds its way onto these renourishment projects. So all of that sand essentially stays within the littoral drift areas and is recycled and repurposed.
And it's beautiful sand.
Most of the
time.
Most of the time. So that would mean it'd have to get replenished while we're dredging, pretty much, same timeline.
Well, that's how, it's just, I want to say coincidental.
Yeah.
Very frequently, the contractor that's dredging the stand also finds themselves getting the job to cover the revetment. It's not always the case, but sometimes that sand is purchased secondhand by another contractor from the dredging contractor. Either way, guys, at the end of the day, we get paid for that sand that comes out of Georgia Pond. I think it stimulates our local economy by finding its way into these projects. And
this is the same thing.
Scott, I thought I heard you say that you did not think a DEC permit was required here. So did I hear that correctly? And if so, what?
Army Corps.
Army Corps isn't required.
Army Corps. Okay, thank you.
DEC application's already been filed.
Thank you.
Scott, just out of curiosity, you said you came up with this 50% number for this project or sometime in the past?
No, this is the first time that I have broached the issue. On 199, there isn't a, on 199 Lilycombe Lane, there isn't a figure. So if a small 10% portion of the revetment gets exposed, theoretically, you have to do a dune restoration. For the Rayner property, we do it, the client's wonderful, and they want to comply. As Jim said, some clients, well, they're not clients by that juncture, but some property owners don't comply.
And John, you had asked about the difference between the Rayner revetment and the revetments that were in front of you tonight. Quite honestly, she has just taken much better care of that revetment than the adjacent property owners. I mean, not to bemoan the village, but, and as you guys know, she, you know, we're in front of you. And, you know, I mean, to cover that thing with sand, we also had Lee Wisher, who is the coastal scientist on this, come out on numerous occasions when Mrs. Rayner's revetment was exposed and take a look at the stone. And his opinion was, you know, she's kept up with it enough so that that stone has remained in better condition than the stone.
That revetment was probably constructed, you know, it was Juan Tripp's house, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, that thing was constructed to.
It was constructed prior to 1993, but in my research, the 1993 DEC permit was jumped out. Prior to there was the first actually the 1993 was a revision. It was originally issued by the DEC in 1992, and then it was revised in 93. But before 92, it's not very well documented as to who approved it or what was approved.
And I'm sure that it was done very well.
Yeah, I think it was done twice too. I think Pat Bistrian actually made it taller, maybe in the 80s.
Yeah, this looks like a good project.
I'd like to make,
Thank you.
right now, I'd like to make a motion that we table this until such time, and please contact us.
Okay.
And once you have your DEC approvals, and we will get you right on the agenda for the next meeting. And I think unless somebody here has an issue that they think should be hashed out, that we want to tell them now that they should include in their design documents. John, you had the most questions. Is there anything that you see here? Okay.
Thank you. I think that's a fair compromise. We will come to you when we have a DEC stamp plan, and we'll talk again.
Are there any other steps that are gonna be built for the property owner to get?
Excuse me?
Other steps being built, so there's beach access with the
It's a
property owner?
wooden stairway.
Yeah, there's a wooden stairway right here, right now. That's gonna be rebuilt to conforming specs. But that's it.
I have a question about that access. Is that general access?
You mean on the village property?
The village owns that.
Yeah.
So as long as anybody can get down there.
There's one parking
can walk
space.
across.
There's one parking space.
That parking space available to
Anyone,
anybody or not just village?
anybody can park there. But there's
I don't
only
know
one.
the answer to that. I don't, it's village. It's village property.
It's almost
Owned
like
by the village.
It's like a park though, almost. It's like that's how what it's called, Talmadge Park or something.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the strip. I just never knew, and I know years back, nobody really bothered it.
Yeah.
People have been.
There might have been more spots,
Discouraged,
but
like-
some homeowners put some boulders down too to prevent people from parking there.
Mhm.
Sometimes when the wave gets good off.
There's a bench there. There's a bench there and a plaque. Somebody donated a bench in memory of something.
Right, I think that was the village and
I think so.
and the Kex that donated
Something along
the
those
access
lines,
parcel,
yeah.
I think, yeah. as well.
So, Ponsky, maybe while you're here, Scott, and Damien,
Yeah, we can talk about that.
I can't talk about it. I was part of the project, but members of the Ponds Committee visited that property today. You have the memo closing out the permit from Billy Ajak.
I do have that with me.
Is that
I-
24 West
I'm-
End?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we met there, was it two or was it pre-COVID we met there?
Excuse me?
We met down there originally before the project started with Rick Drew. Is that?
Oh, okay. That was a while ago.
Yeah, 3 years ago.
I did
Excuse me
submit a
one
request.
second. This is LTV. If we can get rid of that stand, if we're done with that stand, that would be fantastic. Perfect. Thank you.
The voice of God.
This is not-
It is now. Under Georgia. 24 West End. Yeah.
So I submitted a request for permit. This was a wetland restoration at 24 West End Road. And it's been recently completed. Jim Grimes was the contractor. Billy Hajak, the village consultant, was out there recently to inspect it. And he issued a memo on December 20th, 2022. As soon as I got this in January, I figured it was a good time to close out the trustees permit. So unless, Billy included pictures in his report, so I did not submit pictures because, Billy did. So,
Yeah, we were there today, Ben and I we were just wondering if Billy had given the memo and the okay, so there it is.
Billy's fine
Yeah.
with everything.
I think everything looked, it was a beautiful job, came out.
I don't have,
Yes.
he says something to the effect that it was done sufficiently within the conditions of the approval.
And Jim, you want to just talk about the temporary irrigation?
Well, that's a condition that this is outside. Just recognize that is stuff that is outside the trustees' jurisdiction.
Correct.
Okay, the wetland buffer does not touch any trustee property. However, it was in all likelihood a condition, buffer was a condition of us providing a Frank Miley's cutting permit.
Right.
Here. So that was one of our conditions. The condition related to the irrigation is one that the village could, ZBA put on this property. And that is that irrigation system could not be in place past the second growing season. So given that the property was planted this past September, that irrigation system will be required to be removed by September 2024. And I would expect that the client intends to do that for our purposes in the establishment of the plant material. We will be looking to irrigate it past that. In fact, given the fact that these things have gotten pretty well rooted in, we in all likelihood would probably not utilize an irrigation system this coming growing season unless we find ourselves in a situation like we did last year where it was extremely hot.
So if you were to close this out and you were to issue correspondence to me agreeing to the closeout, may I ask that you actually put in your correspondence that the irrigation has to be removed by that date that you referenced?
Scott, you can't say that to me. You can say that to Ben or or Dave or Francis.
I think it would be helpful if that date were referenced in your correspondence, so the client has that in their records. We may not be associated, we being InterScience may not be associated with the project at that time.
The other thing, guys, that should be brought up is this, the deer fencing that's there right now, which is temporary to the establishment. And again, that should come out of their by, I want to say, mid-April
Of this year.
of this year.
So there's two layers of deer fencing, one right down against the water and then the other one about 10, 15 feet back. And they weren't gonna come out at the same time, right?
Well, they could come out.
They could.
I'm okay if that's in writing. We'll forward that on to the property owner and
There's one layer of fencing there, the sort of landward layer that again is outside of the trustee's jurisdiction. I would expect that the village will likely notify us. The other layer of fencing is actually within the pond limits itself. It's on trustee land.
And the Phragmite cutting doesn't need to be part of a maintenance program?
It already is. That's
Oh,
already
okay.
permitted.
Okay. So
And
what,
I think you renewed that permit this past trustee permit. I think you already renewed that.
I renewed it and it expires in August, I believe, this year.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to close out the trustee permit for Phragmite cutting and native vegetation planting based on keeping the irrigation in for 2 years and the deer fences in for a year.
Yes.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Anyone opposed?
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks,
Good meeting,
guys.
and I appreciate your consideration on the revetment. We'll be back and we'll have an approval for you. So, thank you.
Hopefully the DC gets
Yeah.
back to you.
You can always help.
It's only, I hate to say it, it's only been 4 months.
Yeah, really, yeah, that's. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, Good night, thanks. All right. Next, we have Jim Walker for 104 Georgia Close Road. Yep.
I have to put up the offending easel, sorry.
Before we get going on this, guys, I want to recuse myself on this one. My company's involved in this.
Ben and I were there today too.
All right, before we get started, I'll apologize because I don't have anything as interesting as Scott. This is a project I can offer a little color to, though. 104 Georgia Close Road. I did this project prior for Robert Niederlander, who trustees probably were involved with. Robert Niederlander was part owner of the Yankees, and all the Yankee memorabilia would be in here. And he had a woman named Susan DeCleva do the work. And in 2 weeks, 2-week period, all the Phragmites was taken out of this area and put in a truck there and then hauled to the landfill. At the time, the common reed restoration was pretty successful. And Robert Niederlander was thrilled, and he gave me a T-shirt from one of the World Series victories. So that's the most of the color that I can recall. Robert Niederlander was a lot of fun to work for. However, he did not do the whole project. We actually had permits to do the adjoining property, who I remember was, the guy's last name was Beard, but that project was never done. This project was done, and it was successful, and it was a pretty nice project, especially the tupelo trees offer a lot of shade, so the Phragmites didn't come back in those areas to a large extent. Subsequently, this property was purchased, and we're working for the current property owner at 104 Georgia Close Road. And this property now involves a common reed restoration, basically in the areas where the common reed exists, but also is a shoreline restoration to cure overclearing that was done. It's going to be a regular common reed management project. The design is Grimes Land Design. The work is selective cutting. The shoreline restoration is more involved than was done for Robert Niederlander and more complete. So what do you see here is we see button bush proposed. It's unusual. We're in a freshwater part of Georgia Pond, so that's kind of exciting. We see something that's not typically proposed, and that's a nice thing. Regular northern bayberry, 3 square along the shoreline in the water. There's inkberry proposed to a small extent, which is present in Georgia area, and that's a nice thing. But we also have sweet gale proposed. Sweet gale is more of an unusual plant. Find it in shaded areas in the town of East Hampton, and it's a nice native plant that typically we don't see people propose. So this is a lot more complete and exhaustive proposal for the shoreline restoration here. We also have blue flag, soft rush. These are normal plantings. We have the tall cordgrass. It's present in all areas of salt marshes where the salinity is lower, and we have more of a freshwater input. And underneath the tupelo trees, we see ferns. I think that's most of the shoreline restoration. There is a component of removing invasive non-native plants, including stiltgrass. Stiltgrass is a real problem. Everywhere you do wetlands restorations, stiltgrass tries to come back and take over, especially areas that are open. And we're going to take care of that. Mile-a-minute weed, that's a terrible vine that you can't let grow into wetlands areas, or it will take over and kill the plants that you just planted. Japanese barberry, which spreads on its own. Porcelain vine, another bad plant, and mugwort, which is a noxious weed. So I believe that's most of the presentation that I have. We're going to restore the shoreline. We're going to control common reed, and yes, we'll have to come back, assuming project goes forward, to do repeated annual permits at the town trustees. This project was in front of the village, but the lawyers pulled the permit, so we have to go back to the village when we have the rest of this stuff included in the village application. So I did make application to the village and we pulled it, and it's going to go back to the village when the upland component is more well understood. It's being handled by Eric Brown's law firm. I think that's all you need to know. The DEC permit application is in, and it is proceeding because it involves this. So we're moving ahead with all of the shoreline work. Jim is here to answer any questions that I may be unable to, but this is a project site that was successful, and I was proud of it. The property owner sold the property for $12 million. And then we go back to work for somebody else, and hypothetically, we're going to do a better job this time. So it's kind of exciting again to return to a site that I did when we were much less experienced in this type of a project.
What year was that? Did the project?
Oh man, you ask hard questions. I think 2012.
Oh, okay.
That's a guess.
It wasn't that long.
Don't hold it to me. Hold me to it. I think it was 2012. Robert Niederlander sold out. I think he still has children in the area, but Niederlander sold out, and presumably the shoreline restoration that was done then helped him sell the property. The current property owner is redoing upland stuff and now has to do selective cutting for the common reed management, but also more extensive shoreline restoration than was done in 2012.
Okay. What's the confusion with the upland stuff and the construction? It seems like there's
not my headache. That's an Ackerman, Brown, Packman, and Goldstein. I was told to file applications immediately, so I did. Pam Bennett had them at the village. If you speak to Pam, you can ask her. I asked her, should I come and get it? Because routinely, if you submit an application and it's not complete, they tell you to come pick it up. And she said, no. And then she mailed it back to me the next week. So the upland stuff is going in, and probably there's architects involved, and the work was ongoing and the village stopped them. So that's approximately what
This is a separate deal, though.
What's that?
This is separate.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't think the trustees care about the guy's patio.
Yeah, we were there today and Ben and I, it looks like a good project. It definitely needs some restoration. And I think as soon as the DEC gives the permit and okays it, then I would give the okay as well.
It's a big nice size upland buffer and.
You should expect the DEC will probably take 6 to 8 months at the least, but yes, they have it. And yes, I filed it as soon as I was told to work on the project, which is the same time the trustees got the project.
You guys want to approve this before we have DC approval?
Well,
Probably table
the
it.
case for me, because, what's the difference here? I mean, I know we talked about a rock revetment, this is just a revegetation, but I don't know.
The state may have input on plantings, and I would urge the trustees to hold off and not approve it until you're ready. Being ready in this particular type of project, if I don't have a DEC permit, I'm nowhere. So it's fine to come back to the trustees at that time.
What's going to be the length of time of construction on this?
Preparation is the part of this project that takes the most time. The actual planting is no more than 10 days to 2 weeks. The preparation work, although it's not going to be continuous, it will probably span the better part of the growing season. Because what the goal is going to be is to intercept the various weeds as they emerge throughout the growing season. I'm going to use, for example, Japanese knotweed, or not, mile a minute. Mile a minute is an annual vine, much like crabgrass. That plant dies at the end of the season. The copious amounts of seed that it produces throughout the growing season is what germinates the following season, and you see the plant again. Japanese stilt grass is very much the same way. So in order to eradicate those types of weeds, what you really need to do is do a disciplined hand removal of those weeds throughout the growing season. Other weeds, for example, like mugwort, where it's outside of the DEC jurisdictional boundaries, those weeds can be attacked using a chemical control as long as it's a registered product for that material. And again, as the weeds are encountered, you have to address them. And what's most important, not only are you trying to address those specific weeds, you're also trying to monitor and deal with the seed bank that's there. So throughout the growing season, as these seeds germinate, as they start to emerge, they're dealt with. So in terms of the timing, how long does it take? It takes as long as it takes. Sometimes that's something that can be accomplished in a few short months. Other times, that preparation time could span multiple growing seasons. An example would be a project that Jim and I worked on, which this board reviewed, 19 and 21, 23, Chauncey Close. We were 18 months before we felt that we had adequate control over the weed population. And you know what? In retrospect, I would have given it another 6 months. What forced us into the planting more than anything is you're having materials grown specific for a project. There's a shelf life that those materials can be held before you've got to use them. You have to do make the best fit. But, you know, maintenance and management post the installation is critical to any of these projects. If it's not if it isn't followed up, if it isn't continually maintained for at least 2 or 3 growing seasons, you're basically wasting your money because you are gonna see those invasive weeds come back, maybe not initially in great numbers, but if unattended to, they will basically reclaim the site.
The DEC permit will say 85% survival over 5 years. And realistically, a 3-year project is probably the minimal amount of time to take to deal with the shoreline issues here. There's a lot of tupelo trees. These are good conditions. Comparatively speaking, it's an easier job than many spots.
So if they're 6 months out for the DEC, you're talking about August, the earliest.
You know, we don't make permanent predictions at our office. It's bad business.
It sounds like it's
When
next year.
when are you actually gonna plant this thing?
Yeah,
Well,
next
that's
year.
most likely, that's gonna be in the 2024 growing season.
Late next spring.
Is there anything you
So
need
why
to
you
get
here so
started
early?
with maintenance?
What's that?
Why are you here
Well,
so
you
early?
need permits.
We get yelled at.
And you need
Nothing-
A lot of permits.
There's nothing
Okay,
to do on
okay,
these
okay.
projects.
Come say hello
because
and-
You're in
No,
jurisdictional.
I told you I didn't have as exciting a
range
project as Scott.
of DC and. the
I try. I gave as much color as I
Not just
could.
I'm just trying to understand the
But,
timing of all
You
this.
know, that's what got this present homeowner in trouble. First place, was doing things without the permits in place.
Okay, so we know you're coming back.
Come back and see after the DEC tells me I'm okay.
Okay.
Last time they told us to plant all kinds of stuff. Robert Niederlander simply removed all the Phragmites and the blue flag iris, for instance. The soft brush came back on its own. There are some real encouraging things that will happen here. So maybe some of that 3-year permit process will be a little quicker, but realistically, it's better to tell boards it's gonna take some time. And that's the proper way to handle those.
So would this be something where we issue like a multi-year permit?
Well, I can't really speak to that.
Right now, the permit process that the trustees have is fine for this kind of project. I don't need a 5-year permit. We'll be glad to come back and do the renewals that are specified once you get into the common read management.
So if we issue a permit, we would be issuing a permit just for the work, not the maintenance, or both? Because we,
Just for the work.
Well,
The work isn't even our,
just to point out, the management of the Phragmites is the first phase of the actual job.
and then it's,
And post-planting, there is ongoing Phragmites removal.
So there's maintenance involved right from the start.
it's the first part and it's the last part.
Yeah.
And if they don't do it, they'll sell the property and 10 more years later, I'll come see you again.
Thanks. Okay, thank you, Jim.
That's a consideration for change of ownership.
Well, they can carry, they carry with the land, so
Scott's showing me on.
we can transfer those permits to a subsequent owner. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to do multi-year permits when you're issuing permits for the construction, because you're kind of getting ahead of yourself. You haven't gotten to the maintenance phase of the project yet.
That's what I'm thinking.
And in some cases, it would be more proper to require annual permits on a property that perhaps this board felt the need for monitoring for compliance.
Although we can, we would, I would think, typically require an annual reporting.
Yeah, that's what the village is doing now. And you know what? Is sometimes the homeowners bristle at it, but you know what? All in all, it's a very good system because what it is it's a little like the salt tree. You gotta have verification that those missiles are actually not there. So.
He said the salt tree. Trying to wrap my head around the salt tree.
Stuck on the bristle. What does that mean?
Jesus Christ. This has gotten painful.
Point out the applicant has left the room.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. Mark Mendelman, Seacoast Enterprises Associate.
Good evening, everyone. Mark Mendelman with Seacoast Enterprises. I think we'll be getting progressively less and less exciting as the night goes on.
That's why we set it up.
So I'll start with Harbor Marina. We came to the trustees last year and got a 10-year maintenance permit, T number 1/2022 for Harbor Marina. So I'm here to report what we've done and what we plan to do. Basically, last year we rebuilt the fuel dock. We redid the piping and the dispensers and put sumps under the dispensers. Basically, no changes to any of the footprint of the thing or anything like that, but made it safer and better. We redid the travel lift piers, same thing. New timbers, new pilings. We replaced a couple of pilings that had broken off, and that's all we did. We submitted the pictures before and after. Can't really tell the difference between before and after, but those things are new. This year, we're definitely going to replace at least one piling that's been broken off. A couple more pilings need to be replaced. We'll do some maintenance on the docks and a little bit of maintenance on the bulkhead, no dredging or anything like that. So that's where we are with Harbor Marina. That's 10-year maintenance permit. It's working out really well. It's lines up with all the other agencies, with the exception of the Natural Resources Special Permit, which is a little bit shorter time window. So that's Harbor Marina. Any questions or anything on that?
I mean, the 10-year permit concept seems to be working out very well, right?
Very well, yeah. It works for us. If it works for you, if this kind of a format works, happy to continue. Next is 3 Mile Harbor Marina. We had a 3-year maintenance permit that had expired. That was TMH number 3-18. That's expired now. We submitted the before and after photos for that. We also had a permit T number 2-22, which was in 2022 for installation of 12 additional finger piers. So that was like new construction versus maintenance. That expires tonight. It expires tonight. We did install 7 of those new finger piers and the catwalks in 2022. We've sent in the before and after photos for that. And we just want to renew that because we have an additional couple of finger piers that we want to install in 2023 under that. So we've sent in the renewal fee and hope that that can get renewed.
I'm comfortable with that, and I could make a motion now that we renew G222.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Anyone opposed?
Did you guys get to the gas pump document?
At Harbor Marina?
Yeah.
Yes, we replaced the fuel dock dispensers and the lines in the dock and upgraded it all to the county. That's at Harbor Marina. We're down at 3 Mile now.
Yep.
But yes, to answer your question. Also at 3 Mile Harbor Marina, we have submitted a site plan application to the town and to all of the agencies. That site plan application includes some grading work that relies on having the bulkhead, the older bulkheads that are there, replaced and raised 18 inches. That could be under a maintenance permit that's similar to Harbor Marina to replace those bulkheads, but in the general scheme of making a site plan application, you have all of your different agencies and you submit everything to everyone. So that's what we did. We submitted the entire application to the trustees, but the only thing in the jurisdiction of the trustees is the replacement of that bulkhead. So I leave it up for a discussion amongst the board. We're not going to go in front of the planning board until March 1st for that. And that's just a preliminary application. So it's not like it's on the front burner. We're not going to get to it this year. So we have some time to talk about how it makes the most sense to proceed with this. It's really up to you. You can either say, here's a permit to replace this bulkhead, or here's a 10-year maintenance permit to do the bulkhead, the floating docks if they need to be maintained, reclamation, dredging, etc.
Well, this application's been filed with us for this bulkhead. So, and it's the whole bulkhead at one time. So I'd kind of prefer to leave it that we approve the bulkhead reconstruction in its entirety and consider wrapping it into, if we discuss a long-term maintenance permit for the marina, that we wrap it into that after the fact. The only, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe when we've talked about things like bulkheads and docks in the past, we've talked about giving our permission, not necessarily having to wait for a DEC permit to give our permission. So I'm happy either way.
Well, John, given the fact that this is entirely in our jurisdiction, I think it's not inappropriate to issue a permit. Peter, do you have? Mark, sorry. I got confused again. You guys are looking more alike.
I know.
Has nothing to do with our vision.
There's nothing to do with your vision, it's your voice and, the whole thing, Do you have your DC permits on this one in place already?
So yes, we have a 10-year maintenance permit from a DEC, but I thought I would mention for commercial sites, the DEC is now issuing a general permit for all bulkhead replacements, which means all you have to do is submit a notice of intent. It's a general permit that's already, you're already permitted. You submit a notice of intent and you can do the work.
Okay, and that includes the 18
That
inches,
said,
right?
John,
Correct.
if you want to make a motion to approve this, I'll second it.
All right, I'll make a motion that we,
Can I?
go ahead.
Being that we're not going to be in front of the planning board until March, and that we're not going to be doing this until maybe in the winter of this year or maybe next year. What I don't want to see is a permit get issued tonight and then we don't use it and we have to.
That's
Renew,
okay,
renew.
Mark, you can pay us to renew it.
And we're happy to do that. If that's the easiest way, I'm happy to proceed
Well,
that way.
it's kind of up to you. If you want us to hold off and you come back to us when you're ready.
The renewal terms are, you can only renew once and then you have to reapply, correct?
No,
No?
we're fairly forgiving on that.
Okay.
If
All
you
right.
think that having our acquiescence here will help you with natural resources in the ZBA.
Yeah, maybe.
John made a motion.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, I'll make a
I don't want
motion.
you to be so reluctant about this. You're the first person that's ever come before us that's now backtracking.
I'll make a motion. We
I'll second.
approve this, give a permit for this bulkhead replacement, 18
Second,
inches
please.
higher.
Jim, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank you. Lastly, the moorings, transient moorings. I don't know as there's much to report. We submitted the list of people that stayed on the moorings. We submitted the application. I'm sure the application just goes through an administrative cycle, but if there's any questions about the transient moorings, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, this is just annual reporting of activity, just like the Harbor Marina. I just say there were 102 anchorages last year, if you will, or boats. Some of the boats were repeat anchoring for a total of 213 nights.
These are transients,
Transient, all transient.
so they rent a mooring for the night.
Yeah.
So
We've approved 3 Mile Harbor Marina to basically run the transient anchoring program.
Mooring,
So
yeah.
they're coming in every year asking for 6 or 7 or 8 or 10
Transient moorings.
moorings.
So we own the gear, we set the gear. Trustees grant the permit for us to have a mooring on a commercial basis rather than as a boat owner would have their own private mooring. So
How
we
much,
have,
I'm curious, how much is it as transient for one night this summer?
there's preseason and postseason, preseason and high season. Preseason and postseason are like $75 a night, and I think it's $100 a night during the week.
Yeah, the most anchoring was in July, 42 boats. August was 37.
Fireworks night is always booked out.
So the average stay was 2.1 nights. So it's worked out pretty well, I think. And there's certainly a need for,
It's a little bit lower than last year by 3 nights, but so we're
Post-COVID.
consistent with 7 moorings we think is enough. There's not demand for an 8th or a 9th or. Yeah.
Should we, you had requested a 10-year maintenance permit.
For 3 Mile?
One of your requests, 3 Mile Harbor
Did I
Marina,
get that wrong?
10-year maintenance permit on the work
No, we just
associated with.
approved the bulkhead.
It was basically a discussion topic as to whether or not the bulkhead, you've already approved the bulkhead, so that 10-year maintenance permit.
You have any other
We'll
specific
revisit.
items that need to
So
be
you're,
done?
No, we have the finger piers that we're doing, we have the bulkhead that we're doing in the future. You know, if we have to replace a plank on the board, I hope that would be okay to do without a specific maintenance.
So you
permit.
want to discuss the 10-year maintenance in the future?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that would make sense. Like John said.
when does the 18 is the 3-year maintenance permit? That's the only multi-year permit you've got now.
And that expired. That expired.
Expired. So you don't have a
Correct.
maintenance permit.
We don't have a maintenance permit.
So you want to come into us
For a maintenance permit?
significant maintenance?
Like I said, the bulkhead is the bulkhead and the finger piers are the main items that we're focused on in the short term. And those have been permitted under those permits. Why don't we close those out or do that work? And if we need a maintenance permit, then we come back, or we come back and wrap it all into one maintenance. That's kind of the discussion that,
Well, I'm just thinking, the bulkheading is gonna take a while before it's done. So you're not gonna have the bulkhead work, the reconstructed bulkhead.
we would do that in one winter,
Right.
but it's going to take a little bit to get all of the permits in a row to actually pull the trigger on, as well as financing all construction plans for everything else too.
So I guess what I'm thinking is, we're not talking about a maintenance permit till after that's in place.
I think that makes sense.
We might be talking 2 years down. We might not be talking about a maintenance permit for another couple of years.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
And, okay. All right, fine.
And nothing else on the agenda, but I think the maintenance permit idea, we come to you for Halsey's and for gardeners as well, because it makes sense to have all of the properties under the same kind of permitting regimen for maintenance.
How do you feel about, this is something we've kind of talked about, trying to dovetail all these permits together. You've got 10 years for harbor. If you're gonna come in 3 years later for 10 years for 3 Mile, would you feel better about, let's say you come in 3 years later, would you feel better about getting a 7-year maintenance permit so that Harbor Marina and
No, that's
Harbor Marina end at the same
inconsequential.
time?
I think you're better off having them, each facility with its own separate
Right.
maintenance. Each facility has its own special maintenance needs, right?
Correct.
I know you're just trying to streamline it, make it easier.
Yeah.
Well, I just, in terms of keeping track of it, would it be easier for the trustees? Would it be easier for Seacoast to have all their marinas start and stop with their maintenance permits the same?
No, I don't think so. I think each property should have its own permit sequence. When the start and stop date is, they don't all have to start on the same day.
John, you don't have, it's not like they're looking at these properties comprehensively, that they're doing all new pilings in all the properties the same years. They're, they're doing this somewhat sequentially,
Right.
So, there may be
Focus on the worst.
urgency for a particular marina at a particular time.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying is that if let's say there's 4 marinas, if over the course of permitting long-term maintenance permits on all 4 marinas, we time it so that
They all come due
at the same time, would that be easier for everybody to, over the long term, keep track of when things come due?
No, because you still need to keep track of all your permits. And even though the Mendelmans own several marinas, they are all single separate ownership entities. And at the end of the day, if we're dealing with 5 marinas, we're dealing with 5 separate owners. So it's just like 5 separate clients. We just have the luxury of either Peter or Mark coming here are very, amenable. But
Okay.
And that's the expectation as well. Every year we're coming here to tell you what we're doing. For something.
Sometimes it's coming here for permits that you don't want. You'd rather not have this issue for some unknown reason.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
All right, next we have Rick Whalen to discuss Crooked Highway, Trustee Road.
Good evening, Mr. Clerk, members of the board. From the seashore to inland. So anyway, this is just a quick update on Crooked Highway. I think I was back before you in either November or early December. I forget, one of those times. So just to clarify, and for people who may be bored enough to be watching, I mean, the Super Bowl's over, what do you watch? So, we're talking about a section of Crooked Highway that is on the northeast side of Bull Path, not far from Swamp Road. The section of Crooked Highway in question, just so everyone knows, is an existing open road. It's already there, it's cleared.
But it's not paved.
It may have been paved early on, but what's there today, you probably wouldn't call pavement. So it's open, it's in very poor shape. It serves 8 lots, 7 of which have homes on them. 1 is still vacant. And what we've done, we're talking to 1,000 linear feet of road at dead ends, and then it continues as a common driveway to serving, I think, 4 of the houses. And so in January, on January 13th, bless you, we made, by the way, it's Rick Whalen from Whalen Filer, PLLC, representing the homeowners on Crooked Highway. We submitted a petition to the town board, what's called a road improvement under New York Town Law Section 200, which is improvement districts. Basically, we call it a road improvement district for lack of a better term. And what will happen under a road improvement district is the town board is asked to create an improvement district for a section of road or highway, which is in unimproved or unsuitable condition. That road is then improved by the town, which hires contractors to do it. They create a road improvement district. The cost of the work and the preparatory work is then charged to the homeowners that benefit for it over a period of years. And they get a tax assessment added onto their tax bill until each homeowner has paid off their share of the road work. The town is fully reimbursed for the cost of the work that's done. At the end of the day, if it's not already a town highway, then it has to become a town highway, which is why the trustees are involved, because Crooked Highway is owned by the town trustees. So this 1,000-foot length of trustee road under the town law, in order to be a road improvement district and come to a conclusion at the end of the day, it has to go into the town highway system. This is very similar to one other project which was done by the town in the 1990s, and that was the Merchants Path and Six-Pole Highway road improvement west of Route 114. That was a bigger project, obviously. The middle of Merchants Path is maybe 2 miles long or so, or something like that. It was actually improved, plus a length of Six-Pole Highway to the north of Merchants Path. And the same deal, when that project was done by the town, those sections of the road had to be turned over to the town. So,
and this is what happened with essentially all of what were trustee roads. There weren't, they got rolled into the town road system. Now, question, Rick, you say you've got 8 properties, 7 of which are developed.
Right.
Okay, the undeveloped property, how is that dealt with?
I believe that will be charged. That's owned by, I believe, Dennis DeAndrea from Linscott. I don't think they tried to get his name on the petition. I don't think he signed on the petition, but the town will do 2 things at this. Well, let me explain what the process is. So we submit the petition in the town. What the town has to do next is they need to get an engineer to estimate the cost of the road improvement, because they have to hold a public hearing. At the time of the public hearing, there has to be an estimated cost of the road work. We're not quite exactly following the town law procedures. We're actually following advice from the town attorney's office. The town law would have us come up with the road estimate, which is not really very effective because the town might want to do something different. So it was suggested to us by the town attorneys that the town will simply go out and have its engineers figure out where the road work should be done. For example, if you look at the petition, it talks about curbing. That's the language that comes out of the town law. We're not proposing curbing. We don't think there's going to be curbs on this road. But the town will hire an engineer, maybe they'll use whoever it's got a contract with. They will estimate the cost of the improvements to be made. Once we have the cost of the improvements, the town has to go to a public hearing. one of the things the town has to do, and this is apropos to Jim's question, is the town has to allocate the costs of the work among the affected or the benefited properties. And I think they're going to do that just using the ad valorem method, which is basically how you do assessments. They're not going to base it, I assume they're not going to base it on road frontage or anything like that. Everyone who's using the road, whether you have full frontage on Crooked Highway, or whether you're on a flagship, you're going to get a benefit. Even the vacant lot will get a benefit, although of course right now it's vacant, so it's going to get a lower assessment. But I think at the end,
That's what I was speaking
yeah, so
to, is when you do those lower assessments because it's vacant land. I know in the past you had those, like when you applied for a building permit on one of these properties, there was a hidden cost associated with that building permit. And that hidden cost could be 50 grand or 100 grand that you have to pay for the road improvements that were done. You know, the town, it's very easy for them to kind of amortize that over home because of the, you know, the assessments. But I was wondering if they were going to do.
yeah, so what you're talking about, Jim, that's town law 280A, different section of the town law. If you come in for a building permit on a road that's not fully improved, the planning board they'll get advice from their engineer. The planning board has to determine what they think the appropriate cost for you to do road work is to get your building permit. So that's a 280A assessment.
Okay, so that's not what.
Yeah, this is different.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's, it's a good question. For example, what happens if you get if your assessment at the time the road improvement district is created is such and such, does it go up if you build a house on the property later on? I don't know the answer to that question. But the town board will have to come up with a methodology whereby they figure out how much money of the 8 lot owners using the road will have to pay per person. How long that assessment will go. Will they pay for 15 years, 10 years? And then they'll have a public hearing on that. Obviously, we expect that since we got almost all the homeowners or lot owners to sign the petition, we think they're all on board with this. Town board has a public hearing. At the end of the close of the public hearing, the town board has to determine that this is in the public interest to fix the road. If they agree to do that, then they're going to create the district. They will hire a contractor. The contractor will do the work, and all the cost of doing the work, including the preparatory work, like all the stuff we're talking about now, having the town engineer come up with this, all that cost is then charged to the homeowners through the road improvement district through an annual addition to their tax bill.
So Rick, what comes first on this thing? So, do we need to have this completed to even get to that stage of town approval and the public hearing? Or do the trustees sit back and wait and see if you even get to that point, or if it passes the public hearing stage? Where in the timeline do we come in?
So the only thing the trustees are involved in this is at the end of the process, when the road is improved, not before then.
After it's
trustees
approved.
would give a deed to the town. So if you had an objection to it, you said, no, we don't want to give this road up. Well, then we would kind of want to know upfront. Other than that, I mean, if you're okay with doing this, then you're more or less committing to when the road work is done, you'll give the town a deed to the road. And that's what was done with Merchants Path and Sixpole Highway. Again, I want to emphasize, we're only talking about 1,000 feet of Crooked Highway. It's only the section to be improved. There's no new road being cleared or created. It's all existing road that's going to be improved.
You don't expect the road to have to be widened to meet the,
well, the road right of way actually is very wide. I think the road right of way is like 100 feet or something like this. It's a very road right, but the actual roads cleared area, probably not. I mean, it's pretty wide. It's in bad shape.
Yeah, if anything, it's going to be occasionally going to have to make back the shoulders.
Right, you might, the actual improved portion may actually be a little bit narrower, because what's happening now, people kind of go around the edges to get around the potholes. Yeah, it's getting wider.
Highway extend beyond this 1,000 feet?
Yeah, so it extends as a paper road to the south, crosses over Bull Path, then is actually improved for a section as a common driveway for several lots. But that common driveway veers off, and that Crooked Highway continues south all the way, I believe, to 2 Holes of Water Road. And most of that length is paper road, meaning it's woods.
Beyond this 1,000 feet in this vicinity of these houses, are there other houses possible? In other words,
no, I think all the lots that I don't think anyone else, first of all, immediately south of where this improvement stops is a wetland. And then beyond that wetland to Bull Path is just woods. I don't think anyone, I'd have to check, I don't think anyone's coming in off Bull Path on this section. Let me just, can I see it on there? Yeah, it looks like all the lots in question. So this is to show John, but this is the continuation of Crooked Highway. There's a house here, house there, house here. I know this property belongs to someone up there, and I think there's a house there. So the answer is the
Where do they
most yeah, either off Bull Path or one of them actually comes off Northwest Landing Road, that very narrow piece. That's big. That's like a 13-acre lot. So the remainder of this section of Crooked Highway going to Bull Path will probably remain in its natural state, unless you guys do something with it, which hopefully you won't.
In terms of, trustee question, I guess. Does this just get given to the town, or do we sell these resources?
No, it just gets turned over.
Unless, of course.
Well,
your
because
clients
it's
would like
going
to make a generous gift to East Hampton Town.
The fact that it's being turned over to the town means it's still public. So any access that existed previously will continue.
Right. It does not become a private road.
I mean, if it's a trustee road or if it's an East Hampton Town
Well,
road, it's the
just
same.
Keep in mind, guys, all of the roads in East Hampton Town were
Trustee, right, so what's the difference?
Well, there isn't. There isn't. What happened is, in these particular properties, when these properties were initially developed, they had, and this is what the trustees were about, not landlocking properties. They needed access to their properties. The trustee road provided that access. We provided these property owners with easements when they developed their properties. The language on those easements put the maintenance and management of those roads, put that burden on the property owner. And we've seen it countless times, property owners coming in here asking us to hand over the trustee road to the town, and the town turning around and saying, we don't want it. And what's fortunate here, this is not paved. We had a situation a few years ago where our trustee road, we allowed a developer to pave that road 30 years ago. When they did it 30 years ago, they did it roughly to the spec at the time, or maybe not. When we approached the town or the highway department about taking that road into their system, Steve Lynch's comment was, the road's too narrow, the drainage is inadequate, and in this case, the drainage has failed. And no, I don't want that bucket of tar. Okay, so the homeowners that were on a subdivision, that subdivision passed through Trustee Road, it kind of put them in a tough situation because there was really no way to move forward or back. This is actually fairly clean, fairly neat. The town improves the road. We acquiesce to putting it into the town road system. And you know what we've just done? We've taken all of the liability off the East Hampton Town trustees. Okay.
Just elaborate on what Jim is saying. Most of the road network that we're all familiar with in town, the basic roads, the Northwest, for example, Old Northwest Road, Two Olds of Water Road, Northwest Road, Northwest Landing Road, Hands Creek Road. Those roads were originally reserved by the town trustees mostly in the 1700s when the land allotments were made. They were town trustee roads. By the latter part of the 19th century, so the 1800s, there was something called the Board of Highway Commissioners. And the town began to formalize those roads, actually survey them in a more proper way than had been done 100, 150 years earlier. And the late 1800s, and especially into the 1900s, well, the 1900s pavement began. The roads in Northwest Woods, most of them were paved under the highway superintendentship of George Sidmiller Sr., who I actually interviewed a while ago, 40 years ago. Fascinating character, by the way, fascinating guy. He was the guy responsible for paving most of the roads in Northwest Woods. There was no formal system at that time. They just were sort of paved, and the highway department, he was the highway commissioner, highway superintendent in the 30s, just began to, there was no deed from the trustees back in those days. So that's how the main road was. Springs Fireplace Road, Accabonac Highway. You will not find a deed from the trustees to the town for those roads. There was no deed. They were just surveyed, many of them by the highway commissioners. At some point in the 20th century, they were paved and they became town highways. The 21st century and late 20th century were a bit more formal. The roads that you still have, like Merchant's Path, if they are going to be turned over to the town after improvement, you're going to give the town a deed. But the older road network, it just moved from the trustees into the town ownership. And, there were no formalities involved.
So what are you looking for from us now, Rick?
I wanted to update you and just make sure if you guys were to come back and say, well, no, actually, because we're moving forward. We expect the town will find this to be in the public interest. The people on the road are willing to do it and pay for it. So, there was a problem where you were going to say, well, no, at the end of the day, we don't want to give this to the town. Well, we would want to know it now. So really, that's all. I just wanted to update you on what we're doing.
Rick, have you checked to see if any of these 8 property owners currently have easements requiring that they maintain a portion of the road?
I think we might have done that early on. I think some of them do. But it's sort of, it's not really relevant to the process because, whether they have the right to maintain it, they don't have a system to maintain it. There's 7 different homes actually, and there's no systematic way. One person can go out and pave the road for themselves and the other people don't have to compensate that person. So the only way to make it fair in the long run would be to have it as a town road.
Well, I would find it relevant if they were currently accessing a trustee road without the easement, especially if we find out later down the road that the town maybe doesn't want it. But I haven't heard that as of yet.
So the road, we do know the road was cleared in 1979. What I don't know, I think I do know, that I don't think the town trustees began to require these road wide easements until the mid 80s. John Courtney was the trustee attorney. So I think it was the mid 1980s. John became the trustee attorney, I guess like around 85. And after he was the trustee attorney is when the trustees began to require road, access easements over trustee roads for building permit. But if you had a building permit you built earlier than that, then you probably don't have a trustee road access easement.
When were these houses built?
Will the town accept this road if we offer to them? Do you know?
Well, let me just answer Chris's question. The first house was probably built around 1979 because the road was open in 79.
Okay.
So I would think the very earliest houses go back to that period, very early 80s, but I don't remember exactly when each one was built.
The 80s boat, everything.
Yeah, but actually, will the town accept the road?
Yeah.
Sure, because they're the ones dictating the specifications and they're going to hire the contractors to do it. So when the road is done, it'll be done to town specs.
How bad's the road right now?
It's flat, so there's no slope to it. It just got a lot of potholes, and if you're driving a car, you're winding around to avoid the potholes, and when it rains, it's a mess, and it won't get any better if nobody maintains it.
Not good for Lamborghinis.
No, yeah, the Lambo. I don't see why we would.
Don't have low, slow vehicles on this road.
So I think we're all in, right? We're all good?
I think so.
Yeah, but we don't have to approve
We
this.
don't have to approve.
Yeah, it's an update. I didn't want to go forward with the town board and not come back so you know what we're doing. Because if the town does go forward, at some point, they're going to be asking you guys for a deed. All right?
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
You never know. All right. Good night, guys.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks.
All right. That's it for public comment.
Just for the record, you have 0 callers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll go start with new business. NY class investment pool. A few weeks ago, a number of us were on a call with an advisor on this NY class investment pool. With our CDs coming up and they're paying like basically zero interest, we're looking for a better place to put the funds. You were in on the call. Do you want to talk about it at all?
Sure. So it was interesting. It's called the New York Class Investment Pool. We had a really nice gentleman who kind of leading the Zoom call, giving us a ton of information about it. And it seems like a really great opportunity potentially. There's a lot of towns, fire departments, schools that use this pool to invest their money. We have a lot more liquidity than a CD. With a CD, the money's locked up for X amount of time. In this case, it's invested, and we can still access it. We can use it, move it around if we need to. Seems to be very low risk involved, and it pays a nice percentage. Right now, it's a fluctuating rate, but right now it's around 4.5. He said 5%. That's like
4.16.
4.16, which is generous, and I think that's fine for our needs.
And just so you know, we did check into
Dime,
and the thing that we found out after getting our hopes up is those rates are not available to municipalities.
At Dime?
At Dime.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we're gonna find that pretty much anywhere. They'll set up municipal checking accounts and these CDs, but they're gonna pay nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a couple of CDs that are coming up for renewal.
Yeah.
There is one right now on our.
Well, I would like to make a motion that rather than roll that CD over, that we open up an account here and start to move not all, some of our investments into this.
We have one CD that came to maturity beginning of last month.
I did.
And we chose not to roll that over at this time. So that's just hanging in the basically in the checking account now. I think it's about 69,000.
Well, maybe what we could do is take that money, open up the account with that.
Yeah, I don't think he said there was a minimum to get started.
There was no minimum.
So, I'm more comfortable doing that than downloading.
Yeah, well, I don't think it makes sense to pay.
And then also within this system, like we could set up separate accounts for each, if it's their scholarship fund or this fund or that fund, and they're all labeled. It's pretty well organized.
They're not really funds, they're like sub accounts.
We just have one account with them.
But it just allows us to monitor.
We can
where
put
our
it,
money-
Organize them.
we can organize it ourselves.
I'll second.
Okay.
Yeah, so
All
we're
in
gonna.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have the Friends of Aaron St. Patrick's Day Parade. Who's talking about you? Again,
I wasn't ready to, but I know Susan, I'm happy to.
When is it?
It's on the 26th.
You may want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh, in March.
Oh, that's coming up.
March, not that far away.
Not that far away.
No,
Yeah.
we're gonna meet again before that.
No, it's gonna be like
You wanna
probably 2
table
or
it?
3
It's up to
meetings.
you.
I just know Susan put in an application to get us a spot. So we'll probably do the same thing with the truck.
Same thing as this
Yeah.
with the truck and
Truck and the boat.
pump out boat.
Yeah. Bill, do you want to
6 weeks.
Yeah, I'll probably,
do that again? Dave, you in?
I'm in.
Okay, oh, great. Okay. And I wonder if we need to order anything. Or just buy
Susan ordered it last year.
Oh, she did?
All the
we had,
beads and
see what she has.
beads and candy. We
We
still
had
have some.
Yeah, we have
lines and
boxes.
stuff.
We still have a lot?
Well, we
Okay.
can
I
go
thought we went through it all last year. Throw it all.
I mean, we could probably.
But we did, we ran out of beads.
Yeah.
but- Did we throw
Pretty
candy?
quick.
Yeah.
There was candy
We're
and
handing out
thing that ran
roses,
out of.
too.
Susan has requested
We
an
went
inventory of
through
stuff.
the- We went through
That's what
deciding
Susan
what
wanted
was
us to
environmentally friendly.
hand out balloons. Really.
Mylar specifically. She wanted the Mylar.
Gotta be careful with balloons these days.
That's for sure. Maybe we get a little more creative with decorating the boat.
Yeah, I mean, but
Spray painted green.
I
we would,
mean, I really,
we gotta, yeah.
You're
We
gonna
had the sign, we had
in the
signs,
charge.
you know. Oh, that's what supposedly, yeah.
Yeah.
You'll be busy that day, right?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be able to help the trustees out.
What if we put the boat up front?
Yeah, so what worked great, what worked good last year is we had trustees walking next to the boat, so kids weren't running out. Right, and I think we definitely need that.
No, I think that's a nice.
So it was Dave and I in the boat, we had Bill driving.
Susan and I were walking around handing out.
Okay, Susan probably won't be able to walk.
I think if there's any year we step it up a little bit, it's probably gonna be this year with Jim leading the way.
Yeah.
So I agree, and I'm happy to help out too when it comes to decorating or expanding on what we do, but it'd be a good year to really show up with Jim leading the way.
I'm previously committed with the fire department.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Sure.
yeah, we'll do the same thing as last year. We'll just work to make it a little prettier.
Sounds good. Yeah, hopefully it'll be a little warmer.
Maybe you can convince me to participate. We'll see.
Yeah, we want to get you.
Come on out, Francis. It's fun. It's a fun day.
Goes a long way.
Was it last year that
I'm kidding.
was it
I'm kidding.
last year everybody got COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah, last year. we
Yeah.
had COVID.
Everyone in the truck.
Yeah.
Everybody in the truck.
I was in the boat. Steve and I were in the boat. But you drove.
I got it from this guy.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna
Well,
make
someone,
Francis
we're
step
not
up.
sure.
No, we're sure.
You have
Tradition
DNA.
now.
and all that stuff.
Everyone gets COVID.
What's the date of that?
26th.
Sunday this.
Susan said we definitely need to order some supplies. So
Okay,
we need to approve any budget for that or anything.
all right, so set up a meeting.
Okay.
All right, so I think John had made some suggestions on managing and tracking of outstanding matters.
Well, I just, at least my memory is not so great, and, you know, often we talk about things and put them off either formally or informally to the future. I thought it might not be a bad idea to keep track of those things, whatever, that's a meeting that's tabled or put off. Many ways it could be done. One would be just a running list of things we've put off that could be kept separate from the agendas, but given to us when the agenda is given to us.
Everything we spoke about tonight basically is getting put off. Not because of us, but just. it's just
Well,
gonna-
that stuff, what's nice with that is that the applicant is the reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of that stuff I wouldn't put on the list.
Yeah.
like-
But it's just gonna add up with all the others.
But there are
That's the
things
point.
that we discuss, the multiple year permits. And then, okay, kind of discussion falls by the wayside with, you know, do we pick that up? You know, that could be handled either in a running list that comes with it. It could be handled by, treat it like an appointment, a reminder of an appointment a month from now. Just so that our office staff, there's a little wake-up call. That could either come, you know, they could just generate an email to all of us saying, hey, remember 2 months ago, we talked about this, it's still hanging out there.
Like a table items.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a system in the office for that? Because I feel like you guys would know better.
We have a lot.
Yeah.
There've been various systems, but Alice and I have talked about letting you guys know what's tabled. We sort of know we have 10 table property and 5 of you said you'd follow up on something, but you know, it's not for us to say, hey, you didn't do so. Maybe after each meeting or something, John, were you thinking? We could just give you guys the list of all the tabled applications and maybe maintain what's going on, you know, once a month. I mean, we should just have to edit the list. Things come on it or off it. It's not like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Allison might have some, she's doing a spreadsheet she's maintaining But just a list, Lori always did a to-do list after every meeting, and no one ever did it.
And I think,
So we could try again, you know, like
I think in
a
the far past,
table.
things that were tabled just automatically got put on the next
Yeah.
agenda. And that became, I guess, unwieldy. But it seemed as though keeping a list and keeping the trustees aware of that
Right, it's
list
the trustees.
on a
and-
regular basis would at least keep things in over lines. But it wouldn't burden the agenda necessarily.
And Jim, of course, things that we promised to do, following up on a renewal and things like that, that would be on your calendar with Allison and I. But things that are tabled or need to be done.
My only thought on that is just what does it feel like, what feels good to you as the board members, what's gonna work, like what system is gonna work the best for you all? You know, seeing something every 2 weeks, seeing something in an email when it pops up as a reminder. I think the important part is not what necessarily what, you know, Arlene and I, you know, would like to do or whatnot, but what's gonna work for you guys. It's going to result in the highest level of response rates in terms of taking action.
I think at the bottom of the agenda, you could have outstanding items and we don't have to discuss them, but everyone can kind of see them. And you also email this agenda to us so we can see it in the email. We have a hard copy of it and we can be like, oh, okay, this is something I can get.
And also, you know, what's nice on that, there's gonna be things that kind of fall through the cracks if we're all seeing it.
Sure.
You
so
remember
print it.
something prior to the meeting,
Great.
that running list, much like the agenda items, can be updated.
So in your folders, like that, instead of emailing it afterwards when everyone's forgotten, have it printed while you're at the meeting. I mean, the agenda gets posted to the public. it gets
Yeah, we don't want to
posted to
post
the
that.
No.
So maybe that second page of things to do and pending,
Yeah.
right next to the agenda when it's sent out
Let's try that.
and in your folders.
Yeah.
Allison, do
start.
we have that clearly? Yeah, Francis?
Try that.
Yeah, if that works for everybody,
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Before the meeting, at the meeting makes more sense than after the meeting. Did it work after the meeting?
Sounds good.
Good idea.
So then how about, can you handle tracking that during the meetings? As I'm typing that, that would make more sense for you to
Sure.
track that and I'll do this.
Sure, the follow-up things and then also implementing. You were saying for the trustees, is it easier for the trustees to put a reminder in? Phone, I think having it in your folder is great,
Yeah,
right?
I think let's try that.
Because that's when you're thinking.
Yeah.
It's great. And we'll put reminders, Jim. Big reminders for things we need to.
In the folder, and you guys can take it with you at the end of the night.
Yeah. And then I have a question for outstanding matters, you know, people come and present their application, you know, it always comes up where we ask, do you have DC approval? They normally don't, you know, that's 248 a year out. Should we maybe, this is just a question, should we not accept an application until they have the DC approval? That make it just streamline the process?
Well,
Because we're always waiting on that, and then if
Not
they,
always.
we don't always, sometimes we do approve
Well,
things without a decent permit.
Yeah, examples are, you've got something that's totally in our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes the DEC and even the ZBA, the town ZBA, is looking for us to take lead on that. So to turn around and hand it back to them, we're sort of giving up some of our, we're implying that we're giving up our authority. So, but you know, the way I've done it, and this may not be the best way, is if I think an application is likely going to be modified by one of the other agencies, then I would typically try and put it in the direction of, why don't you get either ZBA or DEC before we issue you a permit? Only because we've done this. We've done it multiple times where we're going to close the permit out. The town ZBA has one set of plans and one set of conditions. The DEC has a similar but not exactly the same set of plans and conditions. And we issued a permit that doesn't quite align with either. And you know, the goal here really is to have some continuity between the different agencies at the end of the day. Whether we're acting as the lead and we're issuing, let's say, a permit for somebody to replace their bulkhead within one of our harbors, that they're going before the ZBA and the trustees have already said, this is okay. DEC's looking at it and says, well, yeah, that's okay, but you know, we just want to see the materials changed. As long as we're able to track that and make sure that it's aligned, that's the important thing here.
Move down to old business. Do we want to talk about multi-year maintenance permits, tracking and fees? Well, we didn't talk about tracking and fees versus year to year. How are we handling fees with the?
The Harbor Marina is paying us a fee every year. The regular fee for an application.
And I think that's probably the best way of handling that.
I think so. I heard talk of, well, should we take an upfront, all of it upfront? But I think it's cash flow is better for us year to year.
So they're not
Well, it's
renewing.
also helping us keep track.
Yeah.
Of the term.
Yeah, you keep track of what's been done.
So they're just sending in a check, but they don't have to renew the permit, right, each year?
No, but they
invoice
have to
it.
come in and tell us
Yeah.
what they did,
Yeah.
what they plan to do next year. But we
The
don't have to
whole
approve it.
concept was
Go through the
things
whole-
happen in the marina, you know, like unanticipated things.
Yeah.
And they have to do something instead of coming in to get permission to change one pile, and this just makes it.
Yeah.
One thing though, with the marina, long-term permits, which, you know, so we gave Harbor Marina the 10 years. And then Fremont Harbor Marina came in with a separate permit to replace their whole bulkhead as part of a bunch of other work they did. And then Mark, he alluded to it tonight. He was like, well, I'm not sure if I should apply for replacing the bulkhead, or should I ask for a multi-year maintenance permit and wrap that into the maintenance permit? And at first I thought, wow, how could you do that? It's a whole bulkhead you replace it. Then I looked at the Harbor Marina permit we gave them.
No, it had that.
And if you read that, they could replace their whole bulkhead under that maintenance permit. I don't know if that was a little bit of a oversight on our part. You know, I had envisioned, okay, you know, fine, the bulkhead can be part of the maintenance permit, but I wasn't envisioning that
Well, I think
replacing the whole
fortunate that we had a
bulkhead.
good applicant there. But yes, if we didn't have such a good applicant, that could really be.
Right. That wouldn't be our intention. So
Yeah, I think when we viewed that as maintaining pilings and floating docks, and that's.
maintaining things here and there.
Right, not an overall construction project.
It was just, it's a matter of the permit's got to be written carefully.
Right.
Well, one major difference is maintaining the dock would not include raising it 18 inches.
Right.
So if they really want to raise the dock, when they replace, if they really want to raise the bulkhead when they replace it, then.
So we want to table this other one for now. Well, we were talking about doing oceanfront maintenance, doing maintenance, sort of thing, where they come in every year.
Well, I think the
Typically.
ones, I would never issue one of those long-term maintenance permits on the application for the actual, like, I'm gonna call it capital improvement.
No, not on redoing it.
Yeah,
No,
but the following year or 2 years down the road, when some history's developed on the project, where you've got an applicant or a property owner that has been pretty disciplined, been pretty compliant with the conditions put on them, not just by us, but by the other agencies, then it probably makes sense to issue multi-year permit for those, for an applicant like that. But on the flip side, if you have a property owner and an applicant that has been, I want to say, a bit of a struggle to stay in compliance, I don't think that's a good candidate for a multi-year permit. I think
So we don't want to make multi-year permits an entitlement.
yes, that's exactly. I think it really should be a discretionary thing.
Case by
that
case.
Well, a discretionary thing that this board takes on, I want to say, applications that we feel, and that may change from board to board, that we feel makes sense.
Well, I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, we're trying to establish a policy now.
Yeah.
Even if it's only for this board.
Right.
Somehow that should be written down, I guess. But
Yeah.
I like the idea of establishing a track record before the multi-year permit is.
Because we have, let's face it, guys, we have had applicants that have been, as individuals, been problematic. And, you know, on an annual basis, they've been problematic. The idea of giving like a 4 or 5 year permit, I just kind of would see that as being, that would be just exacerbating the problem we already have. Because if you couldn't get somebody to be compliant on an annual basis, what are you expecting on a 5 year?
Well, what does compliant mean though? Because in a lot of ways, it's either, are they gonna come in and apply for, you know, to maintain something? Like, let's say we gave it on a dock, a private dock. How do we know they're compliant? How do we know they're not compliant?
Well,
They could just go replace pilings and not ask us, and we'd have to figure it out if they were doing it or not.
I was thinking of something slightly more egregious. You know, we've got a
Replace half their pilings.
no, we've got a permit for a finger pier that's 50 feet long. And in truth, they're 70 feet long or something along those lines. I mean, we've had it. I don't do the docks, okay? I'm gonna talk about Georgia Pond or the beaches. If somebody puts an application into, let's say, I want to do Phragmites removal. Well, the condition of that permit is the establishment of the 30-foot buffer. Okay, we've cut the Phragmites, a year's gone by, and we've had this. A year's gone by, and the commitment that was made for the buffer never materialized, or the 30-foot buffer turned out to be a 10-foot buffer. And this speaks honestly to the alignment of permits. Well, how did you end up with a 10-foot buffer? Well, the village, you may have said that you wanted a 30-foot buffer, but the village gave us a permit for a 10-foot buffer. Well, in truth, neither was done. The 10-foot buffer started out as some plantings and within a couple of years evolved back to the lawn, down to the water. That's kind of what I'm talking about. And then, you know, if you have somebody like that comes in and then feels that they're entitled to, you know, forget this every year thing, like a 5-year permit. Okay, so basically you're hoping that it's going to be 5 years before we get around to visiting your property again and finding out that there is none of the above.
I mean, we could include the right to visit at any time with notice.
No, we have that. We have now, but you know what? It's a little like our dock and bulkhead inventory. how did some of these things get where they are? We actually, as a board, haven't always done the verification, the monitoring.
Seems like it might make more sense for like a commercial entity opposed to a.
Oh, no, but we've got the multi-year things. An example is the coverage of the nourishment of some of these revetments. You've got property owners and applicants, agents that are very disciplined, very good. I don't see a problem with issuing multi-year permits there. You have other properties that have perhaps just no history of doing maintenance, and you have to notify them that, I just want to remind you that when that permit was issued 5 years ago, one of the conditions of all your permits was keeping that revetment covered. And those ones, listen, I don't think you want to do multi-permits on that. If you've got that as a history, you already know that you're gonna have to make phone calls.
What could the consequence be if they're not compliant?
If they're not compliant, they're not compliant. What you got is you got a hardened shoreline, and you have the function and the aesthetic contrary to what we're asking.
Did you mean that, or did you mean what's the consequence to them? From us?
Is there a consequence?
We have no enforcement. What we can do is what we do right now with some of those things. You're either contacting the village or you're contacting the town and asking them to, making them aware of the violation.
Yeah.
And that they'll take up that, and that's worked pretty well.
Does that go in the conditions of the permit too, maybe?
Yes.
If we do a multi-year permit, so they know.
Okay, so we want to go case by case. It's the normal payment every year, each year. As if it were a renewal. Yeah. All good on that?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, what do we have next here? Request from First Coastal on behalf of Jerome Griffith at 60 Edges Bank Drive. Renew trustee permit T3-22, which expires on 3/13/23 for club stabilization.
That's Billy Mack. I tried to get in touch with him. I haven't heard back. Their permit is good until beyond our next meeting, so I just think we should table this until our next meeting. He has requested a multi-year maintenance permit. So maybe we want to think about, is this one we want to entertain? They have come into us every year for a renewal, and they've typically done very little or no work in the previous year, and they keep coming in for renewal. So I would say that on this property, and I think it's as much the owner as it is the contractor that's keeping on top of it. They kind of have established a bit of a track record, so it's something we
The
want to.
track record is not following up on the work.
Well, that they don't need, I think this is a place that keeps the permits going in case they need to do it.
Yeah, they get the permit, they may not need to do it all, but yeah.
Mhm. Okay, we're down to other. CPF Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee update.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I just wanted to keep you up to date on what's going on. So the Peconic Education Program has, I know, asked the town for a contribution to their work from the CPF water quality money. It was a while ago. The town agreed to give them a percentage of the money, and now the committee is sort of tasked with recommending the suggested projects that the PEP is going to use that money for to the town board for approval. They came in to us for a few projects. Some of them we weren't, the Water Quality Committee wasn't entirely comfortable with, and we've had a second meeting and they revised their list. So I just wanted to let you know what the projects were that are being, referred to the town board for approval. The total of the money for this year is $198,000. So the first project or the first chunk of money that they're applying is to program office support of $66,330. It's for a certain staff salary for community outreach and support specialists and travel time and some overhead for Stony Brook. The second project is a Peconic eelgrass assessment and geospatial tool for $81,500 and change. There are 13 eelgrass monitoring projects in the Peconic estuary program. 7 of them are in East Hampton. And this money would be used for two tasks. One would be for about $49,500 to ground truth an aerial survey of eelgrass in the whole estuary. Second chunk would be $32,038 would be used to create a GIS database of the historical observations of the eelgrass in the estuary. And their third project is, and this is one we got substituted in for some of the others that we weren't so comfortable with, is monitoring of the permeable reactive barrier that was recently established in Tanbar Creek at the bottom of 3 Mile Harbor. So there, that's $50,132. And they're basically going to first establish a monitoring plan that's going to be approved by both the Peconic Estuary Partnership and the town's Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee, and then do 1 year of monitoring on that permeable reactive barrier. So that permeable reactive barrier was just established. It's a series of wells, and they've injected material into the groundwater that, if all things go right, will remove nitrogen before the groundwater transits into the harbor. So the monitoring of that system is going to be very important to see how well it works and then decide on, similar systems going forward. So that these projects will be discussed with the town board in an upcoming meeting, and town board will make a decision on whether it wants to accept them or not.
We have Southport Wind Fishery Study.
That's just their winter trawl survey is going to begin sometime between the 20th and the 26th of this month. When they're firm on the dates, they'll publish the dates of their survey in the Mariners briefing to mariners. That'll be available to all commercial fishermen.
Okay, thank Thanks, John. Administrative, we have payment of the bills. Optimum, $64.89. Staples, $149.91 and $78.63. Van Dyke and Hand, our accountant, $845. Do I have a motion to pay the bills?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, certificate of deposit maturing on 2/16. I think we said we would close it.
Yes.
We have minutes from the meeting of January 23rd, 2023. They're available for review.
I'll make a motion. I reviewed them. Susan reviewed them. We both agreed they were accurate, so accept the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. And financials for the months of December 2022 and January 23 are available for review. Hopefully we can approve them next month or next meeting. Yeah. Anybody have anything they want to bring to the board?
The estimated cost for the students, you guys will approve
$600.
spending tonight?
Oh, right. Okay,
I'll
I'm
make a
sorry.
motion to approve the $600 cost for stickers.
Second.
And that, this is an estimate. It doesn't include tax, which I don't believe we should be paying. Okay, so it's second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Al.
Just update on the kayak racks. Took a look at some racks. I took a look at some racks. So we have kind of a list of what probably needs to be done. Something to tomorrow. Go through the work. I think we already, the work's done. We need to do anything else.
We have a budget or price or?
Should we?
It'd be nice to just get a, budget.
And then wait for the next meeting to approve it before he starts the work.
We can always, we've discussed this, we've approved getting the work done as far as approving the budget. That's something that I think we could do via email. I'd like to let it get an estimate first.
I think it'll be, it'll be more than several hundred.
Yeah,
Probably
so,
100,000.
listen, it's just that way, we're not just handing out carte blanche.
Okay, I'll ask him for an estimate.
Yeah.
And then
Next
send
meeting.
We'll send around an email. And get a,
Okay.
Anybody else, just to keep it on the table, the ecobonic shoaling issue?
I talked to Drew Bennett today. He's dealing with the DEC.
Yeah, I see there's been a fair amount of dialogue between him and DEC.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not playing so
they're playing.
nicely
Yeah.
this time around.
Um,
It may take a little bit of effort.
I'm gonna call Sherry myself tomorrow.
What's the problem?
What's going on.
Being strict.
They're being a pain in the neck. Yes, they want a whole new application. They won't just give them an emergency thing. So I talked to him today. He said he's gonna have all the paperwork they wanted. He has it all. It's all assembled. He's gonna have it in.
I'm not advocating this, but I once dealt with Fresh Pond on an emergency basis, and I understand this flew with the DEC, but if it's an emergency, you basically do the work first and apply for the emergency afterwards.
Well, we're gonna be doing the
We don't
same.
want to do that.
Yeah, but I think you worked with the highway department who had a little more
Yeah, that was when,
ability to.
that's
to
when the
declare
roads
an
were being,
emergency.
it was a public health emergency because the roads were being flooded.
Well, this is a navigational issue.
Yeah,
This
I
is-
think
This is an emergency in its own
Natural
right.
resources
So
can go to bat.
Sorry,
Go through there and ground your boat.
And the harbor master.
Yeah,
we could do that.
Up to the team.
If we had to, like I said, I'm not advocating it, it's
No, no,
probably not the
But
best.
no, I
way.
am advocating it.
Well,
You know,
if, I would say as the season gets closer, maybe, but I don't know about now.
It's getting close.
I feel like we're already
Right
there.
early, yeah, it's close.
April 1st.
You know, it has to be
Yeah,
done.
we're gonna lose the envelope.
No, it
and
has to be
do
done
this if
before
we
April
don't-
1st. It's,
Yeah, so I
No.
think this may be a deal, honestly, Bill,
no,
where you do kind of what John has talked about, reach out to Tim Treadwell, have Tim Treadwell send a message over to the DEC that this is a serious
emergency,
issue related to
Tim agreed to do
navigation and
some
safety,
soundings for us.
and that,
Yeah.
we want to be able to address this in a timely fashion. Our back is going to be up against the wall with respect to.
Look, yeah, he's been outside the whole time, but he's fine. Saw him go walking by.
Chris, we hear you.
yeah, so we'll push on it.
No, I think that might, John, I think that's a good.
We're gonna be doing the same thing with the culvert, because with that thing, they want us to open it in December. And we told them we didn't want to open it in December, so we're gonna have to do an emergency thing there. It doesn't make any sense to open it in December. I don't know why they're,
They won't give us a permanent
Is this
modification.
Sherry?
yeah, we got a modification 2 years ago. Get one again, but they're,
She's been cooperative in the past.
I know she
I know.
has, was surprised about this. Anything else?
Motion to close.
I'll make a motion to close.
All in favor?
Thanks.